Howdy folks, I guess I didn't intend to make this week's lecture really like Sith power heavy, but going into it, as I'm thinking, as I'm making these videos, I keep coming up with more and more things that need to be said about the Sith, the dark side, and their relationship to the Force. And so in this one, I want to think more about Palpatine's ability and relationship to the Force. Part of this is that he is playing the long game, this really intense moment of how long has he been working his way through the Senate to gain power and power and power and power, and he finally gets this like imperial presence where he's granted emergency powers to form an army of the Republic, right? And so he creates this army of the Republic, but then immediately preceding that is this denouncement of Republic, the ability of the Republic to give itself over to a dictatorial type rule, this classic like Roman Caesar moment where you're granted emperorship, imperial power, and then you never let it go, right? We're approaching the empire of A New Hope. We're approaching Death Star stuff. We saw the Death Star plans in this. And so for this video, I really want to be thinking about how Palpatine is related to the Force, because I don't actually think he's using the Force all that much. I think that he's playing into the will of the Force. And I want to talk to you about how this appears, especially as we're going to see it manifest in episode 3. Because that's kind of this big, just overarching moment where we're expecting what is coming is that Vader is on his way. The Empire is on its way. Where are all the Jedi? There's 2, right? We're approaching that. We're seeing a ton of Jedi, especially in the Colosseum scene. Speaking of Roman mythology, history, identity of Western civilization, and senatorial republic type governments, right? Palpatine is doing this thing where he's sitting in front of Yoda and Mace Windu. He's sitting in front of the Jedi, and he's like, hey, so there's a Sith Lord. What do you see, Yoda? Yoda's like, oh, the dark side of the Force clouds everything, right? It makes it hard to see. And one of the things is that, well, Yoda eventually learns on Dagobah that the dark side of the Force is just a piece of the Force. I tweeted this morning during my live tweet of Attack of the Clones that the Force as this dark side, light side thing, it's not that the dark side of the Force is difficult to see through. It's that the Force is not allowing you to see. The dark side is this thing that the Jedi keep running up against, but why would the dark side of the Force not be the will of the Force, especially as it is something that's appearing naturally, innately within the Force, right? You have this cave in this swampy space. Why is this all dark side energy? Because dark side energy is a part of the Force. There are ways to access it, ways to utilize it, and that's obviously Anakin's struggle. But what seems to be happening is that the Jedi's insight is clouded. Their ability to prophecy, Mace Windu specifically says their ability to use the Force, right, is being problematized. And Yoda has this very political answer. He's not wrong, but he's being forced to act politically in this very spiritual and organic sense of his knowledge, his power, his ability. And this is part of Palpatine's moves. He's controlling the Jedi. He's replacing the Jedi. He's pigeonholing the Jedi. At the beginning of the movie, Windu is like, yeah, we're keepers of the peace. We're not fighting a war for you. In the next movie, they're going to be generals in the army. That's not really a spoiler, right? Who is going to lead the clones into battle? The Jedi. And so we're seeing this imperial machination of Palpatine unfold. And I really want you paying close attention to this here, because we're going to make some incredibly strong claims about it when we start to see episode 3. But Yoda and Mace Windu, the unimpeachable two top Jedi, are able to sit across from a Sith, and the dark side clouds everything. Now, this could be a proactive use of the Force. It could just simply be that this is one of the Sith Force abilities, and Palpatine is using it here. What we're going to see in the next set of things is that he's actually leaning into the materializing of the will of the Force. The Jedi are failing to perform something, and the Force will not abide that. They are being culled, they are being checked, and Palpatine is leaning into that. You'll see how little actual action he is doing up until much later, right? Up at this point, there is nothing that Palpatine does that is necessarily Force use. We've seen in our own world Caesar himself do exactly the things that Palpatine is doing. This is something you can do. And it doesn't take being a Sith to do that. And so why are the Jedi unable to access this stuff? Well, the dark side of the Force clouds everything. This can also be the Force clouds everything. All right, gang? So we're going to keep this stuff in mind as we progress forward, because there are some big things about to happen. Think about the landscape of A New Hope, and think about how we get there in one movie in between where we're at now and the Empire and Vader being all that is left of this old Force thing, while Yoda and Obi-Wan are in hiding, hoping to grant Luke Skywalker the ability to overthrow the Empire. This is where we are in just one movie. And so there's a lot of ground to cover, and there is something happening when you have this moment of what is this Sith Lord doing? Okay? Because I do want to say that he is embodying and enacting the will of the Force. The Force is the dark side as much as the Force is the light side, and probably that's a very reductionist view of the Force altogether. And so I don't want you to fall victim to that. We have the saga blinders on. We can only see what the saga is arguing, as though Jedi and Sith are the only iterations of Force use, as if the Jedi are ultimately correct. I believe they are favored. They are more likely to invoke the will of the Force. But I believe it is the Force that is clouding everything. And when you say the dark side of the Force, that is this problematic idea that sets up a binary. And binaries never construct good thoughts, great thinking, good philosophy, because then it's either good and bad. You're either with us or against us. And there is no medium. There is no digression. There is no philosophy. There is no ethic. There is good and evil. And by not being defined as good, you must be the only other thing that remains. And that is an incredibly problematic worldview. And Star Wars gives us room to exist in these other spaces, even within it. Even already in just the films we're looking at. And I'm going to show you that notion as we progress through the semester. So I wanted to point that out for you right now. Be thinking about the Force as a whole thing. And the will of the Force would not be the will of the light side of the Force, the will of the dark side of the Force. And so if the Jedi prophecy, this incredible power of being able to see the future, if that is not functioning, then it's the will of the Force. It's not the dark side being a jerk. It's not Palpatine proactively doing things. Okay, gang? I think Palpatine is leaning into the will of the Force, and we will see that come together in a very specific action when we take a look at episode 3 next week. Gang, I will see you there.